The entire MultiVersus community is expecting at least one of the Teen Titans to appear as a playable character in the game. Today, we're going to predict which one we think is most likely to be the first. What's going on, everyone? I'm Spada, and welcome to the 4th episode of the MultiVersus Living Roster. In this series, it's our goal to come up with the best possible prediction for characters coming to MultiVersus, and we do that as a community. My job is to present the characters and provide my best argument for what their likelihood is, and your job is to simply vote on which you think makes the most sense, once you've heard my points, of course. Last week, I asked you all to choose from 5 heroes and tell me which of those 5 was least likely to appear in MultiVersus. Of the 5 presented, it appears Neo is the one you thought would be least likely. Now, I'm not sure that I agree with that assessment, but that doesn't matter. With that, let me go ahead and update the living roster to include the other 4. Okay, so now that we've gotten that business out of the way, let's move on to the main topic. As I mentioned at the beginning, today we're deciding which of the Teen Titans we think makes the most sense to be the first one playable in MultiVersus. Let's start with the character that I personally think is the least likely, and that's Cyborg. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Cyborg. Of the Titans, he's probably my second favorite next to Robin, but I think the fervor to see someone like Cyborg as opposed to some of the others is slightly lower, but that doesn't mean that he has any less potential. My intuition leads me to feel like he's got too many shared options for his moveset that might share similarities with Iron Giant, Rick, Morty, or even someone like Marvin the Martian. But while he does use an awful lot of technology in the same vein as they do, his manifests in a wholly unique way. And at that, he's got access to beam specials, which is something that really hasn't been in the game since Velma's megaphone got basically taken away. He also has potential to work with a variety of different projectiles, making him a super interesting candidate as a zoner. On top of that, since he's not someone I really think fits within the definition of mage in the way that the existing mages on the roster do, I think he'd end up being a bruiser, which would make him the second zone-heavy bruiser since Morty, or maybe third if you consider LeBron. Next, let's talk about Beast Boy. He's another character that I somewhat expect is lower on their list of likely candidates. One, because, like Cyborg, he doesn't really have a super direct reference in the trailer, and beyond that, he is a slightly more complicated character to get right. Given his primary ability is shape-shifting into animals, and that he does that with so many different varieties of animals, it stands to reason that it would be really hard for the developers to make him and feel like they're doing him justice, since inevitably, some ideas or transformations will end up not making an appearance. However, that's also what gives him so much potential as a character. His moveset could either be straightforward in that each unique attack could be done as a unique transformation, but there's also the potential to make him a stance character, where pressing a button transforms him into a handful of different animals. However, the second option would be even more complicated to develop around, and thus is much less likely. In either case, his ability to transform into animals gives them a range of different options for movesets and character archetypes. He could be an assassin, a bruiser, or a tank. I guess you could make the argument that he could even be a mage, but I think you'd have a harder time accomplishing that satisfactorily. He's also a character that's been starving for video game representation, since after 2 Injustices, he still hasn't made the cut into NetherRealm Studios' roster, despite being one of the most requested characters of all time. From here, the next 3 characters are the ones that actually receive direct references in the trailers, so I suspect they are the ones that are most likely. To start, let's talk about Starfire. Starfire has been represented before in Injustice, and my impression of the community's reception of her is that they liked her quite a lot. Though I guess she might have been a bit overpowered. I was kind of out of the loop around the time that she came out. Either way, she's one of the most popular Titans. In fact, one of the most popular characters in all of DC. As an alien, she gives us more non-human representation, and her being foreign to Earth offers so many opportunities for interesting voice lines with other members of the cast, especially given the way that she often talks. In terms of moves, she's most likely to be a zoner, though that doesn't necessarily mean that she would have to be a mage. I think that it would make the most sense for her to be a bruiser or even tank, because despite the fact that she is petite and mostly uses ranged attacks, she is incredibly strong. As a result, it stands to reason that she would have stamina more similar to someone like Superman or Wonder Woman rather than someone like Harley Quinn or Marvin the Martian. Her projectile game also offers a variety of different options for expression, from explosive projectiles, beam projectiles, rapid ball projectiles, to interesting things like being able to shield herself, reflect projectiles, or even absorb energy. It'd be interesting to see what options Player First Games would choose to explore given the variety of different attack patterns she's explored in other media. And then let's talk about everyone's favorite goth superhero, Raven. Raven is also technically only part human, so she might fit into that non-human category. But she is also incredibly popular and likely to grab plenty of fans' attention if she were to make it into MultiVersus. She's a little like Starfire in that she tends to attack from a ranged position, but her abilities tend to complement the crowd control archetype as opposed to straightforward offense. She has telekinetic abilities which grant her a bunch of interesting capabilities. She could act as a fantastic support in 2v2s too, which would make her unique among the DC cast that's currently represented in-game. In terms of direct moves, she's actually got a bigger variety of options than Starfire. She can fire projectiles, as well as move other things in the environment due to her telekinesis. And given her telekinetic abilities, she could potentially even act somewhat as a ranged grappler. But as alluded to earlier, I think her biggest benefit would be that she would act as a fantastic support character in 2v2s, offering a shield for her teammate or providing crowd control by binding up opponents. But I think there's no doubt that her class would have to be mage, since, like assassins, they tend to be lighter than the rest of the cast, and the one thing that Raven would need in terms of vulnerabilities is to be a glass cannon. And finally, let's talk about Robin. Robin is the only character in the launch trailer that actually literally has his face appear. He's also arguably the most recognizable on the crew given he originates as Batman's sidekick. He's actually already got some representation in the game given that LeBron can don his costume, and something that makes Robin interesting is that he's seen many different iterations over the years. Several different people have picked up the moniker. But to keep in spirit with the Teen Titans, we really do likely need to keep it focused on Dick Grayson, though I'll admit I'd pay a lot of money for it to be Damian Wayne. I just know that it's not likely. When it comes to a moveset, he really has quite a lot of options. He's got throwing weapons, a grapple gun, fantastic acrobatic and martial arts training, and he tends to use a bow staff for a weapon, which means that while he shares some similarities with Batman for obvious reasons, with some really subtle adjustments they could make him play very uniquely. And given his weapon, he could provide a similar playstyle to Batman while also having more range with his melee attacks. In fact, since a couple of Batman's buttons are dedicated to setting up gadgets like the smoke bomb or bat bomb, Robin could be the one of the two that focuses more on combat and thus has less or even no dedicated setup buttons, potentially making him the more combo-centric Bat family member. Though, we can all agree Batman has combos, maybe Robin would be more straightforward and thus a bit easier. I would say though, they need to make him an assassin so he's lighter and easier to knock out. Alright, with that, let's vote. So, which of the 5 Teen Titans do you think is most likely to make it into MultiVersus? Cyborg, Beast Boy, Starfire, Raven, or Robin? To vote, click on the iCard in the top right corner. That will take you to the channel's community page, and the poll for this episode will be at the top of that page. While you're there, you might as well subscribe. This way, you'll be up to date on the poll's results, and so you know when to expect the next episode of The Living Roster. Thank you guys for coming by today. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I'll see you all very soon.